But I have to say there's definitely more. BDSM has become way more in the mainstream, right? People know more. And also I remember Alexa Vartman used to joke that, when they started with the workshops, the anal de-armouring with the men, for example, was used to be very difficult. You can only get one finger in. It was very contracted. And over the years, we kind of noticed almost like an ass consciousness that got elevated. Like it was, we see it in the workshops that it's actually that exercise just really flows really easy, for much more easy now than it used to be.
Welcome everybody to a special episode of Technosocial, where Daniel and I are here with Paris and Timo from the new Tantra, both tantric workers. I'm not entirely sure what the word for it is, but I think we'll get into what it is you guys do. We've spoken a bit about Tantra before on the podcast, but mostly from a very intellectual and philosophical perspective. And I think today we're going to get more into perhaps the juicier and the sexier side of things, and especially kind of like, what is Tantra? Oh, look, Paris is happy. What is Tantra? And what is in like the particular form of Tantra that you guys are practicing? Because I was taking a look at the new Tantra website, right? And one of the things it discusses is how when people hear Tantra, perhaps we think there's this kind of hippie new age style of Tantra, which is lots of eye gazing and sacred sexuality, and typically things you'd find at like new age type festivals, sometimes referred to as neo Tantra perhaps. There's also then this old, like 1,000 at least year old philosophical system that comes out of the Indian subcontinent that feeds into things like Tibetan Buddhism today, that works with meditations and energy practices, etc. But then what you guys are doing with the new Tantra is not distinct from that stuff, but it's also got its own unique flavor to it, and I'm looking forwards to digging into that. But I thought as a just like little warm up, and we can find out a bit more about you guys, like if I could just ask, how did you each hear about Tantra, and what was it that appealed to you? What attracted to you towards it in the first place?
Well, for me, I was in a place in my life where I was, looking at self-development, and then I found out that, okay, sex is also an area I can work on. Because I had 2 boyfriends in a row and the sex was equally bad with both of them. So I thought, shit, I'm the common denominator. So I got into first something called erotic hypnosis, which is cool, which works on the mind. So someone who knew that I was into that kind of stuff told me one day, hey, Alexa Vartman is holding an intro talk in Oslo, Norway, where I lived at the time. I was like, who? She's like, famous Tantra teacher. So I went, and Alexa Vartman is the founder of the new Tantra. And I just, the slogan of the new Tantra it makes sense in a weird way. And that's exactly how it felt. It was kind of like, it's just a bit weird, but it sounds cool. I kind of want to try it. The benefits sound really nice. So yeah, I did my first workshop, and then I just got really hooked on it.
For me, a friend of mine, she was in Tantra. She was doing the new Tantra, and she told me a little bit about the workshops. And it was quite explicit what she told me. And I was like, no way, I'm never, ever going to do anything like that. It sounded really scary. And she kind of invited me to do the 21-day challenge. That's the challenge we give to everybody, and it kind of forms the basis of Tantra. Maybe we can go into it a little bit later. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was kind of interesting because I could do it by myself and with my then girlfriend. And so I did. And within 1 or 2 weeks, I was having all these amazing experiences. I felt super connected to my partner. I was having all these multiple orgasms, and it just blew my mind. And at that point, I was like, okay, this is clear. I need to do something with this. And so I started reading books. I didn't go to the workshop because I was still too scared. I started reading the books about Tantra, Mantak Chia, David Daida, and I didn't get it at all. It was too heady, and they were describing all these experiences that I had for myself, but how do you do it? What's the technique, or what's the attitude? I didn't get it. So then at some point I gathered all my courage, and I went for the workshop, and I was so nervous. I almost puked in the car.
Whoa.
Yeah, I was really, really scared, being around people and, working with sexuality with a group of people, probably getting naked. And I was just shit scared. But it turned out to be one of the most amazing experiences of my life. And that's where it started.
What is this? How explicit scary does it get on the first time?
Well, there's different workshops, but everybody starts with level 1. So level 1 is with clothes on. So we like to say there's nothing really scary in level 1. The exercises are very hands-on, right? That's what you said. It's a lot, very bodily exercises, but you keep your clothes on. So there's a lot of outer body work on level 1. We work with boundaries, fantasies, sexual fantasies, things like that. But then once you pass level 1, you can go on to level 2, which is the advanced sex course. And there you get naked. And there you start to do the more internal exercises, vaginal de-armourings, anal de-armourings, those kind of more hands-on genital massages and things like that. And parties. Yeah, parties. So that you can expect a party if you come to a workshop.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
How many people do you usually host at these gatherings? What are the numbers of people?
It varies. The biggest, the country where it's the most popular is Holland.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously with the pandemic, we've canceled everything. But before, in Holland, it's generally around 50, 60 people come to the workshop.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, at the time when Alexa Vartman used to do it, the last year when she was teaching, there were over 100 people in the workshops.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, that was crazy.
And is there anything that you notice about the types of people that reach out to you? Like what are the people that reach out to you like? Are there any common traits, for example?
I would say it's quite mainstream.
Mm-hmm.
Not just people who tend to go to spiritual things. Also,
You mean as in normal people? You mean?
Yeah, I would say the people coming to the workshops are quite from all walks of life. Yeah.
Awesome. So let's go into it. Like, what's vaginal de-armouring and anal de-armouring?
All right. Well, so maybe I'll do the women, you do the men?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So for women, a lot of women have pain when they have sex, unfortunately. There's like a lot of tension. A lot of women have very, let's just call it tense vaginas. And especially in this armoring, there can be many reasons for it. Like it's not really like we have one scientific reason, but many women have trouble having orgasms, have trouble feeling inside of their vagina. So this vaginal de-armouring is like a trigger point massage that you do in the pussy to kind of wake it up and take away numbness, take away painful spots. It's so if you want to have deeper orgasms as a woman, we always recommend to do a vaginal de-armouring. So that's one thing we recommend. We offer on level 2. And of course, the women can also have anal de-armouring, which is to remove tension in the anus. You can say a bit more about that for men.
Yeah,
because that's like a big thing for guys on level 2.
For sure. I'd say when it comes to removing tensions, it's basically the same as with the vaginal de-armouring. I think the biggest added value for the guys is to work on the shame that they have around their ass. A lot of us guys, we we all have an ass, and it can be super erotic zone. Everybody's heard about it, but a lot of guys, they never venture there. They don't dare to touch it. They don't let other people near it because it's gay or it's dirty or many reasons. And I think to get rid of that shame, I think that's one of the bigger goals of the anal de-armouring. At least for me, is how I see it.
Yeah. I even have friends that are gay that practice Tantra who say that in the gay community, the guys that identify as tops only and not as bottoms, they also have that resistance to it. So there's it's a big thing.
It's funny how, like, amongst, especially in my experience, like straight guys, the anus is fucking terrifying. And I've always been a little bit experimental, and so I've always kind of been interested in exploring playing with my arse, like with girlfriends and with a couple of guys I've messed around with. But when I've spoken to about it with my very straight dude friends, and I think the response is like, but bro, I'm just not gay. And then it's like, but what if you get a woman to do it? And there's this funny kind of like, you see the brain going like, but it's gay, but it's a woman, but it's gay, but it's a woman.
Yeah, for sure. There's just it's quite like Alexa Vartman. That's one of the. I mean, she's gender fluid, trans person. Has a very beautiful feminine side, and one of the things she's always said is that it's okay. It's quite accepted for women to embrace their masculine side. Have jobs and wear pants and all those good stuff, healthy masculine. But the men's feminine side is still very, like, even looked down upon. So this is one way also to address it in a positive way.
Yeah. Because you do have to get quite vulnerable as a guy to have someone else, enter you, even if it's just with the fingers. But I would say it's a very just. Personally speaking, for me, that was a very a good experience to know how it feels to be penetrated, how vulnerable it is. And gave me much more empathy also for the people that I penetrate. Right?
Yeah. Honestly, that's the funny thing is the guys who learn to go into surrender in that way, in my experience, I think they fuck much better because they know how it feels. And also for me being in that dominant role or masculine role, whatever you want to call it, is really a lot of fun. So I think for me personally, it's a win-win. That's also why I got so hooked on the new Tantra, is because I could play with these different poles.
Let's talk a bit more about that, because like in my layperson's understanding, this playing with the poles, playing with masculine or feminine or top and bottom, dominant, submissive, is like an important part of Tantra, just kind of trying to get over the dualities and being stuck in one or the other. Like, how do you guys work with these polarities in your workshops?
Yeah, so we get the guys and the girls all together, and we have a little party night called Slut Night. I can tell that, right?
Yeah, it's not a secret.
It's not a secret, no. And we just tell everybody to get dressed as the most feminine expression that they have inside of them. So all the guys, they put on wigs and they go drag, and the women help them get dressed and do the makeup, and the women also go into into some of the feminine flavors, and then we just party. In the feminine.
Yeah, and of course, I mean, there's a big build up until that point, obviously, because most of the guys that sign up for our workshop are straight and have never done anything like that. So there's a huge build up, and also, like we say, it's not like we're not trying to convert people to become drag queens or to become trans, or no, not at all. It's more about experimenting with. Maybe you've never tried it. Why not try? Never try, never know, right? So you try, see if it does something for you, more like a curious exploration.
Yeah, and most guys, they have a lot of resistance against it at first. So did I. I just I just hated the idea of having to go into my feminine, and I was like, yeah, can I just, stay like this? I mean, I feel comfortable like this.
Yeah.
And but I loved it. It was so much fun.
So you mentioned trigger point massages, right? That I imagine need to happen multiple times for that de-armouring process. And we've spoken about the 21-day challenge, which is this challenge where people go 21 days without the so-called spasm orgasm. Can you tell us a little bit more about like what that does to the buildup of energy and to how do you work with that energy, that sexual energy, in your experience? Like,
yeah, that's a good question. Also, because I mean, we jumped straight to the dressing up part, but this is foundation, right? This is what we start with. This is what people can do at home also, without going to a course. I'll tell you how it is for me. But of course, it's very interesting to hear from a guy, because this challenge generally can be tougher for men than for women. See you nodding there, Owen. So for me, it's in a nutshell, the 21-day challenge is to abstain from the goal. So in sex, people are very often goal-oriented to get the orgasm at the end. And for men, that is, of course, ejaculation. For women, that is, rubbing the clit, coming on the clit, having that kind of that orgasm that creates those spasms, this pumping sensation in your genitals. So we call it the peak orgasm or the spasm orgasm in Tantra. And linked to what I said with the vaginal de-armouring, when you as a woman, at least that was what it was for me, when I stopped rubbing and coming on my clits, which I used to do a lot, if not every day, almost every day, my sexuality was just completely clit focused, and I had no sensation in other areas of my body. So that was the first big benefit I noticed when I stopped rubbing my clit, having the clitoral orgasms, and did that for at least 3 weeks. I got so much more sensation, and I suddenly I had feeling inside of my vagina. I could have deeper orgasms, and I also felt more, a bit more energetic, a bit, I wouldn't say happier, but yeah, a little bit. Sometimes when if I had my clitoral orgasm, afterwards I would kind of have like really a dip of energy. I would feel a little bit like little blue, a little bit like, that was it, like a little bit like, oh, that was almost not worth it. So I know it's different for everyone, but at least for me, the 21-day challenge is key to really have deeper orgasms in my body.
Very cool.
Yeah. And for you?
I would say at the start it was weird, because I was so used to getting horny and then get rid of the horniness as fast as possible through ejaculation, either by myself or with a partner. And I think that was the first thing that I noticed, like, hey, I stopped coming, which means we do what with the sex? I mean, when do you stop? And it just went on and on and on. And at some point, it's like, okay, so we just stop to have some food now, or take a little break for some water, or and I must say that it freed up a lot of possibilities during the sex, not to have this goal. And especially my girlfriend, I must say that in the start I was a little bit like, oh, okay, this is, I have to get used to it, because I used to be good in bed. Now all of a sudden I lost all my party tricks, so I had to relearn sexuality basically. And for my then girlfriend, this was great, because all of a sudden she had an inquisitive, curious lover who was trying new things, and not just pumping away for 10 minutes and then just coming and going like, okay, so I'm gonna check my mail now. So that was a big change.
Yeah, I mean, as a woman, when I being with a tantric man is I mean, you get spoiled because they just last so much longer. And also, if you practice it for a while, if you do the 21-day challenge as a guy, and it actually kind of gets easier over time. You can contain more horny sensations in your body. So then for me as a woman, if like whenever you fuck me, I know that I can go crazier because I know you're gonna have more capacity to hold that horniness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's interesting because it's probably now is the first time that I understand a little bit better what Tantra actually is, because I've been hearing about it for so long and in so many different circles, using so much different language. But so one of the important things that I'm learning is that it's about taking away the focus from that very specific area of the body and from that very specific way of doing things, taking a step back, and all of a sudden the energy that doesn't come out in the traditional way, sort of can be explored in different ways. And it's really that exploration that it's all about, right? The fun part, so to speak.
Yeah, it's non-goal oriented, and there's a little bit of a delaying the gratification. We like to take the example of you want one cookie before dinner. You want to wait a little bit and have 2 cookies after dinner, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like I discovered you guys' website and the 21-day challenge round about the end of 2019, actually, and have been kind of working with it on and off since. And like I found that at the time I was single, and I was able to like quite often, but finding it quite difficult to because it's like I want to come, right? It feels awesome, and to just kind of stop and then be there and have my whole body be really horny and then just be like, what am I gonna go and do now? Felt strange, but I have acclimatized myself to it, and I'm at a point pretty much now where I don't come when I masturbate, and I try not to when I'm with my girlfriend, but yeah, it's fucking more difficult because precisely what you guys are talking about, right? Like, it's when I'm really fucking horny and it's just like, oh shit, it's very easy to cross the line. And I think this is what I've been working with at the moment, of trying to get a bit more sensitive to like when I'm getting so horny that I'm going to come and then back off from it. But it kind of reminds me of what you were saying, Timo, about having to relearn sex a bit, because I find like I'm at the moment where I can't say fuck as like hard for as long, because I just get super horny and then I'm like, I want to come, and then I have to like chill out again, and it's like, shit, that's frustrating. But what I have noticed, and my girlfriend's noticed this too, actually, is like we're much more kind of like sensitive to each other and our bodies and our pleasure in a more subtle way. And we've been having more and more of these experiences of like just having like full body shaking, which feels really fucking awesome.
Mm-hmm. Nice. So does your girlfriend notice a difference when you do the practice, whereas when you don't? Yeah,
I think she does. And she's been trying to work with not coming on the clit as well. And I think it's our sex life feels very good at the moment.
Oh, that's cool.
Nice.
And I know you got the book also.
Yes.
It's
right here.
Yeah.
Nice.
So guys, what's the most satisfying part of your job other than obviously the sex?
Oh.
I can go first.
Sure.
Yeah. For me, the one thing I like the most is I assist on the Tantra workshops where she's the facilitator, right? To see the people come in the first day, they're all like kind of scared and they're in their own, little bubble, and then about a week later, they've done all the practices and they've just opened up. And if you look at their faces, it's just like you see these big baby eyes just looking into the world, like, oh my god, I feel so curious about everything, and just people open up a lot from this, and I love seeing that. So I think that's the most rewarding, the most maybe even the most pleasurable experience this work brings.
Yeah, I would say, I was going to say almost the same. What I think is the most fun about this is to be actually able to share tools that actually really work and that help people have permanent transformations in their sex life. That's really, really cool. So
yeah, and I can imagine that those changes are also sort of very big on people's personalities, because we know from the history of Tantra and so many other practices that the sexual energy is so important for who we are and the personality and everything in life, basically.
Yeah.
So you guys are really working with that, which is fascinating.
Yeah, that's actually, I mean, in the new Tantra, we have other workshops that you can access after you've passed level 1 and 2. That are some of them are not sexual. They are more like personal development, working on your ego, your shadow side, things like that, life purpose. But we start with the sex, because if you get the sex stuff sorted, a lot of other things in your life get kind of easier. Yeah.
And does your job also sometimes come with frustrations?
Yeah. You mean so what exactly do you mean, like with the job?
In general, just trying to understand a little bit better, like through your day-to-day. Obviously there's a lot of things that we're learning of how it works, and I was wondering if there's anything that you less good parts or frustrations maybe.
Yeah, I have a few. I don't know if you
anything comes to mind.
Yeah.
I would say that I'm also a sex worker, a gigolo, and working with sex is something that a lot of, especially a lot of guys, think that is like the most amazing thing in the world. But if you get used to it, and that comes really quick, it's also just a job, and you have to do taxes, and you have to plan your agenda, and you have to make sure that everything, it's not very different from when I was a carpenter. When it comes to that, you have the boring things to do as well. And there will be stress as well. So
yeah, for sure. When it comes to, I mean, it's definitely a job. You have an organization to run, you have workshops, but I would say if you think of Tantra, any personal frustrations I have with practicing Tantra is maybe the fact that it's still quite niche. It can be challenging sometimes to find partners that are not in the Tantra world, to practice with. So of course there are a lot of interested people, but it's still fairly new. It's not that popular to tell, especially to tell guys, hey, you can have sex with me, but you can't come. Because it's not necessarily. It goes quicker for women. For guys, it can take a little longer. Well, it does actually take longer for your bodies to get used to this practice. So there's a little bit of education involved with it all the time.
And that's so interesting. One thing that comes to mind is how much of reality is structured, and this is Camille Paglia all the way. So this what is she? An art historian, and she was looking at the history of art, and she was saying that so much of male-oriented art is based on this cycle. It's the similar cycle of the orgasm. So like build up, climax, and then sort of refraction or coming down. So I can imagine how complicated it must be to get used to sort of taking a step back from that and relearning how to adapt to that. So very cool. How has your day-to-day changed with COVID? Are you doing, I can imagine you do a lot more stuff via Zoom. How does that work?
Yeah, well, we canceled all I'll let you take the private session part, but we canceled the workshops. We just didn't want to take any risks. It's not worth it if to hold a workshop and then have a bunch of people get sick.
Yeah.
So obviously we canceled everything until further notice. But we, in a way, And I think that's for a lot of companies. The good thing about especially 2020 being just at home most of the time, you really got to clean up the online stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You know, restructured, made a new website, and we got online courses out. So yeah, that's also, we always wanted to do these online courses because we have so many people from different continents who would like to practice this, but who can't necessarily fly over to Holland or Denmark or wherever we have a workshop. So we made these online courses. So that's the main thing that we're doing now. People can buy courses where we teach exactly what we teach instruct in the workshops, and then we have real demonstrations where this guy and other people on the team actually have sex or show, you know, vaginal de-armouring tutorials, anal de-armouring tutorials, so you can actually do it at home. So that's mainly what we do at the moment, until the COVID is less of a threat.
And the massages and the bookings are done for now. Just meeting people face to face is not it's not the best time for that. So we just sit around and wait for everybody to be vaccinated, and then we can do our thing again. Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about monogamy and the types of relationships that exist within the Tantra community, because what I seem to have picked up is there seems to be this sense of like people aren't so monogamous within your Tantra community, to put it bluntly. And I don't know if that's everybody or if that's just some of you. So for example, it's like you've already mentioned that you guys fuck. I don't know what your relationship is, whether you're actually a couple or just like lovers, but then Timo, you're also a sex worker. I know other people have many lovers. So like, what's it like having many lovers, and how do you deal with things like jealousy or competition if and when it comes up?
You want to go first?
Yeah, I think you're talking about Tantra and our Tantric community. It's not necessarily, you don't need to be polyamorous. You don't need to fuck around for this to work. You can just go and do Tantra just with your own partner. And we've actually had couples come into workshops and do just that. And it worked out fine for them. I mean, there's no reason you couldn't do this. That being said, there are a lot of people who, when they get rid of all this shame around sex and all the ideas that they have around sex, about their sexual preferences, but also around, you shouldn't be a slut as a woman, or you should not. People tend to start experimenting not only with different kinds of sex, but also with different kinds of people, and that is probably what you've heard. People tend to, if you don't have that shame on it anymore, and you have a group of open people that are all sexually interested, it's a little bit like a candy store. You just,
It's also because when people come to our workshops, the TNT workshops, they know it's a space they can explore. So some people who maybe when they go home, they might not be very explorative, they use that space for it. But then you have, a lot of people who just realize that they have sexual fantasies that involve more than one person, which a lot of people do. So some people, if they try it and they figure out that they like it, then they might adopt it into their lifestyle. As for jealousy, competition, all that, well, there will be triggers. And like even for me, even 10 years later, I was doing open relationships before I started with Tantra, but it's still a practice, right? We're friends and lovers. His girlfriend is my best friend. But it's not like we fuck every day, it's like, it's more like on parties, and there's just an openness to it. There's no, I don't know what else to say. We have exercises on the work. We have a level 3, which is our workshop where that we call sexual completion. It's the workshop where people really get to explore sexual fantasies. So and there's a real structure to it, and some of the exercises there are invitations for people to help transcend jealousy, because there are ways you can do that, which involve going step by step, and being together with your partner the first time. It's not like the worst is if you have a partner and that you don't have clear agreements and your partner just kind of wanders off with someone and you don't know what they're doing. I guess that's a really hard one. So yeah, we have a lot of guidelines so that people can do it in a clear way without going into romantic dreams with each other, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine that's a very important part of it. One of the things that comes to mind that I don't know if you can share more about is the actual types of techniques and things that you do there. I was very interesting to hear about the armoring and the sort of the solving of that. It sounds, perhaps some of our listeners will hear that and they will remember Wilhelm Reich, because this sounds a lot like a lot of his work was also about taking away these physical parts of our bodies that are tense and have that armor. And if you put the sexual energy in there, I guess it dissolves it. Could you tell us a little bit more about, activities and techniques like this, if you can?
Yeah. So the can you talk a bit about sexual activation?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as to techniques and methods, I mean, if you look at everything we do, there's just too many to talk about in the time we have. But I think the sexual activation of the spine is something we do in our level 1 workshop, first workshop, where you keep your clothes on. And how do I describe it?
It's like about energy circulation. To be able to contain more energy in your body, and it has a lot to do with getting vulnerable and opening up the body with real trigger points, with massage, and then with the 21-day challenge, having the energy concentrate so much in the genitals, you kind of need the whole body to be like a conduct for that energy.
So basically, you get worked on by your group of peers, people you're in the workshop with, like 4 to 5 people, and at some point, some magic might happen. And to be honest, I was really, really skeptical about this part of the workshop. I went in there and I heard something about energies and about back then they called it Kundalini. This is. I'll just participate, but we'll see. This is not why I'm here. It probably only works when you believe in it or something. But for me, it was a really, the experience to me was almost like being on a trip, on a psychedelic trip. It was very intense, and I felt that my body really changed from that experience, or maybe the connection between my brain and my body. Mm-hmm. So I don't think it really. I think it's really hard to explain what it's like if you haven't experienced it or if you haven't seen it in firsthand.
Yeah, we have people who wrote to us, "Oh, I'm interested in your online courses, but I don't see any energy work there, or sexual activation of the spine." And the main reason is it's just impossible to show that on video. You kind of have to be, the session or be in the workshop space with, this whole group doing this together. It starts with a breathing exercise for an hour, and then go into these groups where you really press on each other in certain spots. Yeah, it's a lot of technique in one go.
Mm-hmm.
So hard to teach that, but the armoring part. You wanted to know, so what are you interested in to know, like how to do it, or?
just really the array of things and techniques that are available. You mentioned, pressing the massage and releasing the energy to the spine or that. And I think that's just fascinating that our body has that capacity, because people don't know about this. People don't, sex is genitals, but there is a whole nother level to that experience and there's ways to learn more about that. And I guess that's the interesting part for me.
Well, I would say, if you want to, if you have listeners at home who really want to learn those techniques, I would say one, buy Alexa Vartman's book. So you show that we have it here too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So Alexa Vartman, the founder of the New Tantra, basically the person who taught us all the techniques, and who you mentioned in the start about the Tantra being an old 1,000-year-old practice, and Neo-Tantra. So of course, Alexa Vartman studied all this stuff, and then she came up with the New Tantra, which is basically all these techniques, but in a modern package, which is easy for people from the West, from the Western minds of the 21st century to get. So I would say, read the book, because she has outlined step by step exactly how to do the things, the de-armourings,
Fantastic.
how to masturbate, how to do the 21-day challenge, how to go into your feminine as a guy. Those things are in there.
How to fuck.
How to fuck.
Yeah.
How to give women cervical orgasms.
Mm-hmm.
Those kind of techniques, they're all in the book. That's one, and which is an easy way for people to do. The other one is, of course, online courses, or get a bodywork session once that is possible, a one-on-one session. Yeah, or come to the workshops. But because if you need a little bit of framing, huh? If I you put on the glove and you start pressing, it's not going to work. A little bit of framing,
We're in such an interesting point in history right now, where it's only been about 60 years or so that, like, in the mainstream, at least in the West, sex has been fine, especially for both men and women. And then on top of that, it's only been, again, about those 60 years that there haven't been the same complications and fears to worry about in terms of biology and pregnancy and whatever infections. Obviously these things still exist, but we've got much better contraception now. And yet 60 years on, it's like, at least what you learn in the mainstream, what I learned from the combination of my parents and school and people older than me, is that sex is fine and you should do it. And here's how to put a condom on a banana.
Yeah.
Stop.
Yeah.
Figure the rest out from Pornhub. And I think people do figure a fuckload out from Pornhub. And I think probably people are perhaps a bit more explorative and a bit more kinky than perhaps they were in general 100 years ago. I would actually love to know the history of BDSM and kink. I don't know if you guys know anything about that, but that's like perhaps a different tangent to the one I'm opening up now. But I think this sense of like sex education in society and like how we actually approach sex and like what place it takes in culture and even in like bringing up the next generation is so interesting to me. I said to you guys in our like previous conversation before this, like, I think it would be really interesting and probably like would not happen at the moment to get guys like yourselves and sex workers and like into schools to work with kids who are like 17, 18 and be like, right, you guys are going to be fucking each other. Here's how you fuck each other.
That's true. You are already in the school books, huh?
Oh, right. Yeah.
Let's talk about the school, the education for children. Yeah, it's just really lacking.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's really, like you say, it's just so uncool. Whatever. Like, I know they mean well, but my biology teacher didn't even talk about, she couldn't even express that women get wet. It was like, it was so sterile. So you've also been wanting to do in schools, huh? Talk with.
Oh no, I'd rather not. No, I think it would be great to have people who not just know a lot about sexuality, but also who inspire sexuality to talk about sex in school. I mean, it's not just what you tell people, but also what you show them, right? Like if you are really not relaxed around sexuality, and you speak from that space, and you are there with a broomstick or with a banana and a condom, and you pass it around, and it's all very awkward. And is this the impression you want to give these kids, right? That sex is something, we should talk about it, but I'd rather not, and everybody can feel it. So
yeah, and like you said, a lot of young people today, they learn it through porn, right? And I would say one of the issues from that is, so first, of course, there's the fact that you desensitize your senses because it gets so visual. So there's a lot of young men who they can't get it up anymore because they can only get it with visual stimulation. That's one issue. But the fact that there's a lot of greediness, there's a lot of darkness, and there's nothing wrong with dark fantasies and those kind of actually there might be a lot of energy there, but to do it like in a more conscious way, not so greedy, not wanting just to come in someone's face and just get rid of your sexual energy in that way. Those kind of things are not available in porn, right? To see like an alternative that is more let's call it a bit more sensitive, a
little bit more serving.
Serving
for the other person as well.
That's a good way to say it.
It's interesting. What this is making me think about is that we know that today's society, sex is a great hook, is a great way to sell things, is a great way to put a carrot in front of people and make people chase after things. We see that in advertising every day and really the whole system. And that only works because people are not really that empowered or aware of, they're not sovereign over their own sexuality. It's awkward. It's weird. You don't talk about it. And precisely because of that, that's why all of these hooks work, because people are not in charge. Because if people were in charge and perhaps more grounded and knowing themselves a little bit better, these kinds of things would work a little bit less. What's your relationship to, sexual advertising, or do you feel like it has less of an impact for you now that you guys are obviously so knowledgeable and I guess experienced? How do you see the sexualization of culture?
Yeah, I think you can say that if you actually have a very rich sex life, that these sexual hooks, they don't have so much effect on you anymore. And so what we see with a lot of people coming to the courses, people are really hurting. They're really lacking something, being intimacy, or just walking around the whole day with sexual fantasies in their head. Once you deal with that and you actually make work of it, things tend to calm down a little bit. And then if you watch pornography, you see an ad that's geared towards getting you sexually hooked. Mm-hmm. It's a bit strange. It's like, but that's not how it works for me anymore.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Very empowering. So that's maybe why some revolutionaries used to be very interested in sex education.
Yeah, and to get away the shame, because like you said, there's it's this thing that has the most shame, it has so much shame in society, and yet most people are really interested in it. So there's this kind of split in your head. Mm-hmm. That I'm not a sexual being, but I kind of want it all the time. So of course the advertisement plays on that.
Yeah, even the other day I was reading something from Carl Jung, and he was saying that sexual energy, or what you call libido, is the one energy behind the whole world. Even arts and music are refinements of this basic drive that is the engine, the basic power. So that's very interesting.
That's great. Yeah, and actually, when you say that, that makes me think that's one of the things we recommend to people when they do the 21-day challenge, and they get very frustrated because you build up all that sexual energy. Because we also recommend that people, that they don't go abstinent during those 21 days. That you don't have to have sex every day or masturbate every day, but do a little, keep it going, and then when people get really horny, full of sexual energy, we say, well, put that creative force into your life. Put it in your career, put it in your family, in your relationship, go for workouts. So that totally fits with what Mr. Jung said. Yeah, it makes sense.
Fantastic. Yeah. Let me know if this question is a bit too intimate, but we've spoken about the 21-day challenge, and how often do you sort of engage in the spasm orgasm, or do you guys sort of practice not doing that all the time?
That's a good question. You want to go first?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So when I started this practice of non-coming, I failed many times miserably, trying not to go there, and it happened anyway. And over time I got better at it. It took me about, I would say, 1.5 years to get kind of good at it, and a few years later I kind of mastered it. Mm-hmm. And so let's say I went 3 to 9 months without having ejaculation. Mm-hmm. And I think it was last year or the year before that I got curious again, like, so how is it actually to have these orgasms, the ejaculation orgasms? Mm-hmm. So I tried to try it out. It's also just fine to experiment with it. And it made me realize, okay, yes, so the practice that we do, the practice that I do, it's working. And if I do ejaculate, that's the end of it. And, that's me falling asleep. It was, yeah. So I've been playing with it a little bit, but as a general rule of thumb, I never do it. I never come.
Yeah, I would say I started in 2012, and of course, mistakes happen. Mm-hmm. Call it having a miss. If you have a miss, that means you had a spasm orgasm by mistake, because there was something in the act that made you go over the edge. You didn't have the control. Well, that will maybe happen for me just a few times a year. It's generally, it's not on purpose. I did also do one time, I think it was 2 years ago, I did one of those, I did a test. I gave myself a bunch of clit orgasms just to see what it would do to me. And I have to admit, that the next day I was, I just felt I felt like I had a fog in my brain. So, and also every time it just got weaker and weaker. So for me, I try to stay away from it for as long as possible. And also because the problem is, if you like, some people like to say, I just come once a month or whatever. I mean, you do you, but it's the problem, at least for my body and what I've seen a lot of guys, is if you come once, that week or 2 weeks after you come are the hardest. Mm-hmm. Because your body gets used to that squeezing again. Mm-hmm. So it's not like, I'm just going to get rid of the energy. No, actually you suddenly start the mechanism again. So then you have to kind of start over with the first week of the 21-day challenge, which is the hardest. So I would say the longer you go, the better. For me, the more benefits.
Wow. So it is as if at the center of Tantra, which is something about exploring, and it's very much about pleasure as well. But at the center is a sort of renunciation, or a sort of limitation. Like, we don't do that. We do everything else, but we don't do that, right?
Yeah.
We basically give up the most pleasurable thing in life, and we get a lot back in return. But it's when it comes to it, it's a very hard practice.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah. Wow, that's so cool.
Yeah, but again, like you said, like going back to, like I said at some point, like you get spoiled because the actual sex feels to me so much better. Mm-hmm. Going back, I can even feel it. If I fuck with someone who is like jerking off all the time, it like they just fuck really fast. There's no that they don't feel anything because they haven't given that time to build up. So yeah, you get spoiled.
I love the idea within the 21-day challenge that you stay sexually active. And I think what I've noticed, and this comes from personal experience, like there's a big online movement of guys around things like NoFap, which is like trying to have this complete mastery over sexuality by having this sense that like, if I don't come, if I don't orgasm, if I don't masturbate at all, then I'm going to have mad feelings of power and control and purpose and et cetera, et cetera, and et cetera. And that's true to an extent because like we've just been discussing that like not orgasming does bring up a lot of energy. But like what I found, like I was very into NoFap for a while and it just ended up creating a whole lot of shame in me because anytime I did masturbate, I was like, oh no, I've masturbated. I've failed. I've not been strong enough. And so I find the tantric 21-day challenge approach much smarter in a sense, and also kinder and more acknowledging of the reality of sexuality. Like I think there is perhaps part of the shadow side, particularly of men, is this desire to dominate and to be in control. And sex is something to feel like I want to be in control of. I want to dominate my sex drive. I want to be totally the master of it. And so I don't do masturbating, which of course actually connects to quite an old Christian view of masturbating as something sinful and shameful. But yeah, I guess that's just that point. I've loved the sense that you can renounce the orgasm without having to feel shame around engaging in sexuality, right?
That's a really important part. Have you tried doing both also?
No, I haven't done the NoFap challenge. I've been on the boards on Reddit, so I know about it. For me, it's not sustainable because unless you really work on your sexuality and you work through your deepest and darkest desires and you live them out and you kind of get cool with them and you lose all your sexual shame, real renunciation of sex altogether is not going to work. You're just going to be secretly thinking and fantasizing about it. You're going to be sitting on your powerful meditation pillow or whatever it is that you do when you master the NoFap, and you're going to be secretly thinking about sex. It's going to be so distracting.
What I like about NoFap is this for people who really struggle with porn addiction, or maybe I shouldn't say porn addiction because there's some discussions whether or not that is an actual thing, porn addiction, but I know that the NoFap people talk about it. But for guys who have really been hooked on porn, doing like a detox is for a certain amount of time is probably not a bad thing. I think Sex Addicts Anonymous also they do like a break. But then, like you say, I also agree that in the long term, unless you're asexual, we are sexual beings. So if you suppress it, it will come out in weird ways. And
what is your the view of porn within the work that you guys do within the new Tantra?
I would say that there's nothing wrong with porn itself. The problem is that we tend to get so focused on the image, and if I think back on my sex life before I started doing Tantra, I often was recalling pornography or certain movies in my head while I was having sex with my girlfriend, just to be able to come. I would go into all these fantasies, and it totally got me out of the moment, out of contact with my partner. And I think that's one of the big problems of pornography. It will definitely take you out of your, out of the body. that being said, I mean, we've made porn. We shot these online courses. Basically, they're porn with an added instruction. Like, this is how we do it, and it was a lot of fun to make, a lot of fun to watch also.
Yeah, tantric educational porn.
Yeah. So I think, pornography can be very artful. It can be very valuable. It can be also really cool to see how other people do their things, but yeah, it has a drawback for sure.
As like a lot of porn is also very goal oriented and also just shows really bad sex. But then of course you have, I mean, it's you interviewed this lady in Berlin, Spanish lady, was Paulita with Lustery, her website.
Yeah, Paulita Papel.
Yeah, I mean, that was a really cool concept to have real couples, like they had all these rules that, the people filming themselves at home actually have to be in a real intimate relationship and to make it real. So yeah, again, yeah, like you said, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just that it's, it desensitizes, makes people lose connection, and just shows a lot of really, bad sex a lot of the time. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of faking. Let's put it that way.
It was a great interview, and I sometimes go on that website and make an account for a month and just really enjoy it, because I think the standard of the porn is actually so much better than what I see on the mainstream tube sites, because it is people with real connections with each other, and the video, it's just it's not particularly edited. It's just real fucking between attractive people who are into it.
Yeah.
And I'm super fascinated by these developments in the porn world that I see going on at the moment. It seems to me to be a bit of a thing that there's almost a European movement of more conscious, a bit more artful porn, as opposed to the more mainstream American stuff, which is very much just massive fake tits and facials all the time.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Like McDonald's.
Precisely. It is McDonald's pornography and McDonald's sexuality versus something that's actually an art product. It's like a movie or a TV show that can be enjoyed. And there's this other company, what are they called? X Confessions, I think, that I'm quite a fan of.
Is that with what's her name? Erica Lust?
Erica Lust.
Yeah.
So their concept on their website is really cool. It's they've got a forum and people can post their fantasies, and then the best fantasies get selected and produced by their performers.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah. That's and cool. They also show a lot of people in, it's not just straight porn. It's I think actually I saw an X Confession which was 2 trans men together, showing how they have sex. It's interesting.
So in the time that you guys have been doing this, have you noticed any sort of changes? Because one of the things that we are aware of is that technology comes in and kind of shifts everything in society, including people's views of sexuality. So have you encountered any shift in the time that you've been working in the attitudes of people? And I don't know, have you noticed any sort of shift?
I'm kind of still waiting for the moment where we as sexually relaxed people can do something with that. Right now we are not able to do this on, for example, Facebook or Instagram, or we can't really show ourselves or what we do. So I'm kind of waiting for a platform or a movement or something less prudish. Something a little bit more sex positive. That's not just a little website somewhere in the corner of the internet.
But I have to say, there's definitely more. BDSM has become way more in the mainstream, right? People know more, and also I remember Alexa Vartman used to joke that when they started with the workshops, the anal de-armouring with the men, for example, was used to be very difficult. You can only get one finger in. It was very contracted, and over the years we kind of noticed almost an ass consciousness that got elevated. we see it in the workshops that it's actually that exercise just really flows really easy, for much more easy now than it used to be. So there's some relaxation I feel has happened.
So the trend is more relaxation.
And at the same time not, right? I mean, I guess it goes both ways, no? I don't know what your how you experience it, but I mean, Facebook has gotten more restrictive.
Yeah.
I mean, we have the whole cancel culture. I mean, all of that is right now is not
people
going the right
are
way.
walking on eggshells.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's this bizarre thing, like I find myself experiencing these days. Like, as you mentioned, there is this restrictive social media environment and like this cancel culture, but then increasingly meeting more and more people online through podcasting who are just a bit more mixed and perhaps comfortable, expressive, open. It's like, but I feel very lucky that I'm in this space and that I created a podcast that allowed me to do this. And increasingly, like the relationships I have pre-internet, I just don't have the same degree of interesting conversations. Like I wouldn't have a conversation this deep about sex with the people I grew up with, but I can have it with you guys and with Daniel and with increasingly some of the people I know from the internet. It's this like bizarre shift into a like quite an interesting international network of people kind of just hanging out and talking online.
Yeah, that's true.
Global village.
Yeah.
You know what I thought about when you guys mentioned ass consciousness? I was like, this is brilliant because
Daniel wants to be de-armored, guys.
The whole point is like, you know how when someone is very uptight, you call them anal.
Yeah.
Freud was studying this stuff, you know. I don't know a lot about it, but you know, you can sometimes just by looking at someone and seeing how they interact with you, sometimes the sexual frustrations come through, or sometimes their personality is so tied to the way they experience sex that they're indistinguishable. Sometimes it's you can tell these things, and that's when you say ass consciousness. It collectively, I know it sounds funny, but it certainly must reflect some sort of change in attitudes, change in personality, even that people that you notice that. I don't know.
Yeah, I can explain it. Again, this was also Alexa Vartman who coined that term, let's just say. But yeah, I mean, you also, I mean, even if that is probably one of the areas that for men that there's the most shame on, the feminine side, going into surrender, ass work, there's still a movement like, you know, trans and drag queens are getting more mainstream, for example.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's definitely opening up in that sense. That's really positive. It's definitely a trend. It's a growing trend. Yeah. I think we can't deny that it is happening, and it's happening increasingly also in guys who are straight, who are you know, not interested in men, but then they just also they recognize that going into surrender feels good sometimes.
Yeah. You don't have to have a big identity crisis because you know, enjoy receiving.
Yeah,
it's totally fine.
And another thing with that is for the big benefit for women who are in relationships with men is what is also not so well known is that if you are always in your masculine, and you, I mean, correct me or tell me how that is for you, but if you're always in that directing mode, guiding mode, always on top, always, you know, working basically during sex, you get drained after a while. You're tired. So switching roles, so the lady going in her masculine and the guy, you know, finally laying back and surrendering, is a really good way for the guys to recharge their batteries. And then when you switch back again, then you have so much more energy.
Interesting.
Yeah, and attraction also. I don't know if you like if you at least I don't know. That's maybe you're not so much a good example, but I know some couples who've been together for many years, 10, 15 years, and they're always in that same routine. By switching, there's like that they get so much more attraction to each other by switching the roles.
Mm-hmm. Because you guys are transmuting this sexual energy, and that just has a big impact on people's lives and personalities. I mean, I don't know who said it, but sex makes the world go round, they say, and it's such an important part of personalities even. Oh, it's fascinating.
Yeah, and get confessed, like you said, living out your deepest, darkest fantasies in a conscious way, in a non-greedy way. You get confessed, it's like
yeah, and it confessed, fucking fascinating, because by doing that's, I believe, precisely how the power of that gets diffused, especially in mainstream society. Because I continue coming back to this point that a lot of the power in society, a lot of the ways that advertising and social media trigger us and dominate the minds of people, it has a sexual undertone. It has always a sexual basis. I'm just gonna throw this out there because this was a thought that I've discussed previously. Sexual anxiety might be at the basis of a lot of anti-immigrant sentiment. Or at least that was something that came to mind. It's always mostly dudes who are anti-immigrant. It's mostly dudes. And I think it's one of those examples where it's about the sexual anxiety. Like you see the people who vote for the far right, they're dudes.
You mean people that are really frustrated, sexually frustrated?
Or that believe that there is a certain, the sexual marketplace is going to become skewed against them because it's all these dudes coming in. And it's like, well, fuck, what about us? So that's just one example that comes to mind of how the sex is at the bottom of everything.
Yeah, there's already some kind of scarcity when it comes to the sexual market for most guys, right?
Yeah.
So I can totally understand it. Like even more competition or even more men in the country to snatch away your women.
Yeah. And with every rule, there's an exception. And in Portugal, in the early 2000s, there was a case of the wives of Bragança. So it was the case that in the early 2000s, a lot of sex workers came from Brazil to that very little village. And the men would hire their services, and eventually they would leave their wives for these women because they just enjoyed it better. So in this case, the anti-immigrant party was a bunch of old ladies in an old village.
Wow.
And why? Because it's the sexual anxiety at the basis of it. They were the far right ones, right?
Oh, that's
interesting.
Yeah. And we've actually talked a lot about this, that for many men, it's the access to sex is so difficult.
Yes.
Huge pain point, right?
Yeah.
And the one thing is, obviously, if you get a lot of money, that will help you. If you're very good looking, obviously that may help you get laid. However, one of the biggest thing is sexual skills. If you get really good at sex, but for real, that really helps your chances a lot to actually get the kind of sex life that you want. Which there's no reason why people should not have access to good sex. But
That's really interesting. Like, do you think that actually having sex skills, and I guess knowing you have sex skills, makes it easier for a man to actually pick up a woman in the first place?
Oh, for sure. I think especially for less relationship oriented connections, one-night stands, or women are definitely interested in a guy who knows what he's doing.
Oh yeah.
Can you tell, Paris, just from like meeting a guy who's a stranger, like, do you get a sense for his sexual skills?
I think that, I mean, if someone's really confident, it's not necessarily correlated, but if someone's really confident and kind of just kind of relaxed in that way, you can kind of feel like, okay, yeah, they have some kind of relaxation with sex. They could probably have more skills there, yeah, if they're really confident. Because if you feel really insecure sexually, the confidence that you may display comes more off as bravado.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fake confidence.
But this is the big thing in like the pickup movement, right? There's a lot of guys who make millions of pounds, dollars, selling tips and tricks on how to talk to women effectively and like how to be confident. And I mean, there's an element of truth to it. I don't want to write off pickup completely, but like, I think I got into men's work and got connected to Manifesto in part through kind of being interested in pickup, being like Googling how to get laid. But there's so much more to it than just the kind of like being good with words and being good with questions, I think. And I think this is where the actual working with sexuality is so, it feels so key. And it's something that I notice about the people I meet who have been through the new Tantra. It's like, most of you guys have this real kind of like relaxed presence about you. Like I could feel it. I could feel it even in this call, that other people I talk to feel perhaps a bit more skittish. And I'm kind of curious what that is. And part of me thinks maybe it's this like, you've been through your sexual fantasies and you know what they are, then lived them out, then there's not so much conscious energy going into like suppressing or hiding a part of yourself. How does that ring for you guys?
I'm not sure I got the last question.
Well, I think if you have a lot of sex, you also relax a lot.
Oh, like that, yeah.
For me, it's almost like having a meditation every day. You kind of get out of your working mind. You get into your body. You feel good. It's kind of
Because it's so connected to confidence, sexual energy.
Yeah, but like it certainly helps a lot. Yeah, and but again, yeah, I mean, certain sides of pickup are great. I mean, it teaches you conversational skills. You've actually been invited to.
Yeah. I was invited to come and show some sexual skills together with a friend of mine. She was the model, to show these guys on these pickup courses how to actually touch a woman when you talked one into coming home with you.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you do then? Usually they kind of filled there, and then the girls would never come back because the sex was horrible.
Yeah.
So then I came over and showed them how to actually touch and massage and escalate. And the funny thing, what I noticed is that a lot of these guys who do in the pickup world, it starts off kind of superficial. It's about getting laid, getting as much pussy as you can. And you check in with these guys a few years later, and both the students as the teachers, and they start doing more and more men's work. They start doing going a bit deeper. So okay, how about instead of pretending you are this great guy, how about becoming a great guy, and not just for the sake of getting pussy, but how about doing that because you want to have a meaningful life and good experiences.
Mm.
Fantastic. I think it relates a lot to the phenomenon of like we were talking about, the incel, the involuntary celibates. So dudes who have a very hard time having access to the sexual, I don't want to say marketplace, to sex, and yeah, there's so many more of those today.
Yeah,
it's kind of a vicious cycle, I can imagine, because you lose confidence, and then it's a part of one's life that kind of goes away.
Yeah, and you stop taking care of yourself, and then you get angry, so you get bitter. Yeah, it's not a good development. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I think it was Alexander Bard who said sexually frustrated men very often are the ones that go into organized crime or terrorist groups and things like that. So yeah, it's actually I was gonna say, okay, that's also why on the workshops we have such a big we talk a lot about removing this slut shaming on women. It's like, hey, yeah, women have a sex drive too, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with if you really want to get really slut fucked, which feels really good when you can totally surrender, go for it. And you want to do it with more than one guy, go for it, because the problem of shaming women like that and making them really prudish is they close their legs and then no guys have access to that anymore, which is not healthy. Because you don't get to live out your sexual desires, which are really, just even on your immune system. It boosts your immune system when you feel sexually satisfied. So yeah, it's dangerous to suppress that energy.
Yeah, fantastic. The only thing that comes to mind now is Bard obviously speaks about the digital libido and how technology has a role in sexuality and how we live it through technology today. And I can't help but to think, like Owen mentioned before, that before the pill, there were these norms of people wouldn't have sex with more than one or two people across a whole lifetime. That was the norm, I guess, in many of our societies for many centuries. And only when technology solved that problem to avoid, unwanted pregnancies or pregnancies outside the marriage, only when technology came in were people able to step ahead and say, okay, now that we got that part sorted out, how do we deal with sex?
Right.
Some people say that the pill is one of the most important inventions of the last ever or of the last centuries, and it's really important that's why what you guys do is very important, because it's about dealing with sex in a post-pill era in a way that's healthy and kind of tries to move forward in terms of the morality. And yeah,
the procreation part is not there.
Yeah, precisely.
Yeah.
But the energy is still so.
Yeah, when it comes to that, Tantra could be a solution for at least some people to deal with this post-pill reality, where sex still has dangerous sides, but there's also a lot of freedom. It is just very, very complex, and I think Tantra could definitely help.
Yeah, I think it's a huge key. And when I say that, I also know that it's not necessarily for everyone. Also, TNT is a special flavor. A lot of people associate Tantra with more, lighting a candle and chanting a mantra, or that there's a spectrum of Tantra. There's a white Tantra, and then there's the more wild side of it. So yeah.
And the new Tantra is definitely on the wild side of things.
So what would, as we're kind of drawing towards what feels like the end here, like if you had any perhaps advice or recommendations for listeners who are hearing this and interested in learning more or starting to explore Tantra in their sexuality, where'd you start?
Well, I would say check out 21daychallenge.com and sign up, because it's free, and then you can try it at home. And the second thing is, I would it's a bit of a shameless plug, but I would buy Alexa Vartman's book, because she's the source of the whole thing, right? So what's the expression? Get it from the horse's mouth. Yeah. So if people really are interested in learning the nitty-gritty of it, I would start there.
Phenomenal.
Yeah. But then the 21-day challenge, if you do it and because people, especially if you're in a couple with someone, and after 3 weeks you should definitely feel a change. It goes quite fast. feel that initial change. So yeah, that's definitely where I would recommend people start.
I think it's the quickest way into tantric practice.
Yeah.
Something you can just check out for yourself. Just do it a few weeks, and if you don't like it, you just go back to your old way of having sex. Why not?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, for our listeners, you've heard it here first. Stop coming.
I guess that's a wrap for today, guys. Thank you so much for coming, Paris, Timo, and for this beautiful conversation. And the links will be on the description for people who want to check the new Tantra out and the 21st 21-day challenge. And I guess that's all from my side.
Yeah, nice one, man. I think that's that's good for me as well. Like, guys, you talked about the book and the challenge. Are there any other websites or anything you want to plug?
Well, check out thenewtantra.com. And we are, right now we're in the process of, we already redesigned the website, and we're going to get all our workshops calendar out. We're going to get all the private sessions out. So yeah, there will be a lot of stuff to read on that website. So that's also a place where people can learn more.
An audiobook is coming.
The audiobook is out.
Yeah.
Yeah. People prefer audio. The audiobook is available. Alexa Vartman's book. So yeah.
Brilliant. All right. Thank you, guys.
Guys, also for your, you spoke quite openly about your own sex life. So I think that's pretty cool. It's quite vulnerable. So thanks a lot for that.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, man. I hope to get to a workshop at some point, to be honest.
Yeah, that would be great. And yeah, you have a lucky girlfriend. I mean, that you are actually, interested in learning this stuff is that's great. It's again, with sexual skill, the thing is when you become really good at sex as a guy, because let's be honest, there are not that many men that are really good at sex. So those guys become really valuable in a way. So that's really cool that you're already on that path,
Wonderful, guys. Shall we wrap it?
Let's wrap it.
Fantastic.
Ciao.
We hope you enjoyed the show. Consider becoming our patron and helping us put out more content like this.
Patreon.com/Technosocial.